Good morning and welcome to the USA Cares podcast. I'm your host, Matt Castor. I am joined as always by Alexis Becker. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning, Matt.
Well, what a day. If you are watching on camera, you are probably going, what in the world? These people have lost their minds.
Bourbon in the morning? What?
We are surrounded by a plethora of bourbon and good bourbon at that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, really cool episode today. I'm really excited to have our buddy Mike from the Bourbon Road podcast on with us. And our second consecutive episode on the Coast Guard.
Yes.
How about that?
2 in a row.
We didn't have anybody for the longest time, and then we've got 2 in a row. So that means, again, and I said it last week, you're going to have to find somebody from Space Force.
I'm working on it.
We're going to have to make, maybe our buddy Mike here can help us find somebody from Space Force, but we're going to make it happen. And I think it can go. But before we get into it, I want to welcome anybody who's new to the podcast, anybody who has never listened to the USA Cares podcast before. This is a podcast all about honoring our veterans, all about honoring the veteran community, serving those who have served us so well. And we're glad you're here. We hope you hit that subscribe button and make this part of your weekly routine. We are just honored that you would spend a little time with us. And I hope that you'll find some encouragement and from the stories that we share and from the guests that we have on. So join us every week. You can also learn more about USA Cares at usacares.org and find out about all the wonderful things happening around the country.
Yes, there are lots of them.
Lots of them. So where can they go to find the events, Alexis?
Well, you go to usacares.org and the upcoming events tab right at the top. Click that, and you'll see all the fun things you got going on.
All the fun things. And, you know, some of those things include, a Valhalla golf outing here in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky. But we've also got chapter events happening around the country. A couple to name off the top of my head. We've got Trace Bravo. Trace Bravo is something that's going to be really interesting. Austin, Texas, Bullets Barbecue and Bourbon. And this is an event you do not want to miss if you are in the Texas area. This is really incredible. Last year, these folks came together at the range at Austin, had a really great time, really get to shoot some unique guns. And then after you've shot the guns, you can go taste some wonderful bourbon from places like Milam and Green, Treaty Oak, some other wonderful folks who will be there. So definitely check that out. There's also a Top Golf event going on near Cincinnati at the end of March 31st. Yeah, so a lot of great stuff happening. Check it out at usacares.org, and we'd be honored to have you at any of those events. As always, if you'd like to support us as we support our veterans, go to that donate button on usacares.org. Means the world to us. We're trying to keep veterans in their homes, keep veterans with their cars and in their jobs, and really help people who are going through a very tough time. But at the same time, the world's in a tough place. So the cost to keep a veteran in their home is up about 250%. And the number of requests we're getting from veterans who need to stay in their home is up 100%. We really need your help. So I'm asking everybody, a little bit goes a long way. So to hit that donate button, and we'd be honored to have you on our team. So, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. A couple folks to thank. As always, our buddy Chris Cruz at Cruz Custom Flags does amazing work, sticking to the theme today of bourbon, building some amazing American flags out of bourbon barrels. Ernst Metals, Cushman and Wakefield, and of course, our friends here at the Speakeasy Podcast Network. Our buddy Robert and team really help us look a little bit better each week and sound a little bit better. If you are thinking about doing a podcast or being a part of this, check out speakeasynetwork.com and reach out and ask for some help. Okay, getting into it.
Yes.
So I'm at our breakfast. We had a fundraiser breakfast back in February, Groundhog Day. I made it Groundhog Day so that nobody would forget. And then I had a whole bunch of people email me and going, when is that Groundhog Day breakfast? But anyway, I'm out in the lobby and I meet this guy who's about twice my size and introduce myself to him. And he tells me he's got a little podcast. And I said, little podcast has a lot of followings, though. I quickly learned has a lot of people who listen to it. And it's all about bourbon, and got to hear his veteran story and kind of his career path. And I said, well, man, we got to get you on this podcast. So welcome to the USA Cares podcast for the first time, Mr. Mike Hiatt.
Well, thanks for having me.
This is an honor.
Well, it is an honor to just come on here and be with a great organization like USA Cares that does so much for veterans. To us at the Bourbon Road is us both being veterans, it's important we realize what it takes to make sure veterans don't go down a bad path. And
Yep.
so thanks for having me.
Oh, this is an honor. And you look at all this great stuff you brought. I hope people are watching on YouTube and can look on here, and they're probably drooling right now. But really some amazing bourbons. And you always seem to talk about a bourbon that I've never heard of. So you always bring something interesting.
Well, the thing about our podcast is we are here in Kentucky. We are in the center of the Bourbon Trail. We'd like to say in the triangle, the Bermuda Triangle of bourbon, because we're out in Shelby County.
Yep.
So we got Lexington, you got Frankfort, you got Bardstown, and then you got Louisville too. So we could just stick around here and taste all the bourbon around here and have plenty to talk about. But what we like to do is showcase bourbons from across the United States, because bourbon is America's native spirit, meaning you can't make it anywhere else in the world. It's only can be made in America, and it resonates with veterans too. Something that's made in America, that's veterans love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's what you guys do is so great, because your podcast, which I highly encourage anybody to listen to, it's phenomenal, but you do get into the bourbons and you tell the stories of the bourbons, and you give some interesting facts, and I always come away learning something, but you're honoring the veterans the whole time. And that's what's so cool. Your co-host, Jim Shannon, he's a veteran too as well. And I know it means a lot to him as well.
Yeah, he's a bubblehead, meaning he's a
bubblehead.
Bubblehead, a submariner from the Navy.
Wow.
Navy
the Navy gets beat up on this podcast, and I don't know why, but they get beat up on this podcast.
Hey, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to be in the Navy, right? So,
well, we accuse Robert of being a cran eater all the time, so
I'm guessing he's a Marine.
He's a Marine.
I can see that.
My favorite color and flavor is green.
Thank you for that, Robert. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I brought some bourbon because you guys got this amazing event.
It smells great in here. I'm just saying. It smells so good, and we got a little taste in front of us. So, I'm quite excited.
Yeah, you guys got that great event coming up in July, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
A bourbon gala to raise money for this cause. So, you'd ask me, say, hey, you think you might be able to help out with that? Well, I might know some people that make bourbon, right? So some great partners had already sent me some bottles. Woodinville whiskey out of Woodinville, Washington, actually. Arrow Yan, she's a good friend of mine. She's donated 3 bottles of super rare bourbon from them, 2 cask strengths and a finished
Thank you so much.
bourbon. Black Lands out of Fort Worth, Texas. Hannah down there, just so great. And she sent 2 bottles. And then I said, you know what? I've got a plethora of bourbon at my house. I brought a couple 12 years, a Heaven Hill bottled in bond, which you can't get in Kentucky. You had said Milan Green.
Yeah.
I got a bottle of that. Steel Austin, I got a bottle of that on the table. One of our listeners actually sent a bottle of Antique 107.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Which is that's a rare bottle to find.
And it's delicious. Yeah.
Out of Texas again is Balcones, one of my favorite distilleries, because I have a connection with them, with their master distiller. They're always sending me bourbon, so I was like, hey, I'll bring you a bottle of that. And then 3 Chord, which is Pat Benatar's husband.
No way. Is it really?
Yes.
Have you met him?
I have not met him. We've had him on the show. So that's a 12-year-old bourbon. And I bought a Elijah Craig Barrel Proof.
Another hard to find.
Hard to find. Good Times, which is a small distillery here in Kentucky. Not a lot of people have heard of them. That's actually a brandy. And now that I'm looking at the label on the back, I probably shouldn't have brought it. I didn't even notice it.
We won't turn that around. That's okay.
And for us to drink today, out of my private collection, I brought a Old Fitzgerald bottled and bond 9-year for us to sip on.
Nice.
A really, really lovely bourbon.
Yeah.
I'm a weeded bourbon nut.
Yeah.
So much so that I got a hashtag Weeded King of Kentucky. I really do just love weeded bourbons, and this is one of the finest out there.
That's amazing. Well, Alexis isn't a huge bourbon drinker, but her husband is, so you'll drink on behalf of him?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
I'll make that sacrifice if I have to. I'll report back.
Well, that's awesome. Well, should we give it a try?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So tell me about this.
Old Fitzgerald comes out of Heaven Hill Distillery down in Bardstown. The thing about weeded bourbon, it actually all comes from really from Weller.
Yeah.
Weller was the original weeded bourbon and stuff, but Old Fitzgerald, this is a rare bottle because of it looks like a decanter. Right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful bottle.
Bottle and bond means it's the same mash season. So this, I believe, is a spring because it's a green label. The fall ones are a red label. It's aged for only 4 years, and it's 100 proof. That's
Okay.
it. There are older ones than this, but this is only a 4-year-old bourbon right here.
Wow.
Actually, this is a 9-year-old bourbon. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It just has to be aged that minimum of 4 years. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Super. You see how much I love it.
I can tell.
And I got to thank a good friend of mine brought this to my house and left it at my house. A friend of ours in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's good to have good bourbon friends.
Well, that's nice when you walk outside and there's just a nice bottle sitting there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
not
think
bad.
this actually came in a 5-gallon bucket to my house.
No, and you bring your own, and you bring some to share, and then you just leave it.
That's
You do
great.
that.
So
Well,
what you want to do, and I brought some Glencairns for you guys for you to keep.
Thank you.
You swirl your whiskey around in the glass a little bit there, opens it up. You can nose it.
That means smell it, Alexis.
I go to wine tastings.
And you don't want to bury your nose in it for listeners out there. You don't want to just dive in there. Just a quick whiff. You don't want to kill those senses. And just think about something from your childhood that you've eaten in the past. That memory, that sensory of your childhood. I get chocolate covered cherries in this. I do get the oak and the vanillas and stuff, but mainly that chocolate is what's coming out. That baking chocolate. Do you bake it all, Alexa? No?
No.
Do you like chocolate?
I do love chocolate.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
The baking chocolate is a little different than your regular chocolate, though. It's not quite as sweet.
More bitter. Yeah.
I do know that.
Well, you're supposed to hold this in your left hand, look people in the eye when you say cheers. Otherwise, you're going to have 7 years of bad luck is what they say. So cheers.
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 It's delicious.
She's like, oh, man.
It's very warm.
Oh, it's really good.
Very.
I'm still getting that chocolate-covered cherries, a little
Yeah.
bit of tobacco on there,
Huh.
some rich leather. Not that I chew on leather all the time. I still get that chocolate-covered cherry in that. A little drying on the back like a nice red wine.
Yeah.
And that's probably that 9-year coming out.
Yeah.
Oak is really there in this one, though. Very, very oaky. But I still get that sweetness, floral notes of weeded bourbon.
Wow. Well, you speak about it so well.
Yeah.
Like I can tell this has just become a passion of yours, and you've learned a lot, probably by talking to all these different distilleries and just getting to know so many people.
Some of it's so fascinating. I don't have a science background. I'm just a hill country boy from Texas that served 24 years.
That's awesome.
And then I was in a bar one night drinking bourbon, and my co-host Jim, he was like, "Hey man, you ever listen to podcasts?" And I was like, "I don't listen to podcasts. That's something my kids listen to. That's a newer generation. We're supposed to be talking about Paul Harvey and stuff." But he said, "Listen to it." And I listened to it, and next thing you know, he said, "Yeah, would you like to come on and be a guest?" And I came on as a guest, and it kind of went from there. His co-host was leaving at the time.
Yeah.
To go play music in the mountains of Virginia.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you like to come be a co-host?" And I was like, "Ooh, I don't know about this." And I like any good husband should do, I asked my wife.
Yes.
I said, "Hey,
Good move."
I said, Jim's asking if I would like to be a new co-host on the Bourbon Road podcast, and she was like, "I don't know if that's good for you," because the problem, and I've told you this, I'm a bull in a china shop. I have one speed.
I've noticed that about you, by the way. I've noticed that. I asked you if you can get a couple bottles, and look at this room.
Just a couple.
This is just the beginning. I want to make the Bourbon Gala.
Well,
but
it's going to be awesome.
It took off from there. The podcast just kind of flourished. I remember we only had like 8 listeners, and I was like, man, there's 8 people listening to us. And then next thing you know, it's 100, and then it's 200, and then it's 1,000, and it keeps building, and people keep subscribing. And now we're at 150,000 subscribers
Unbelievable.
to our podcast. And I'm thinking, that's a city right there. That's a small city.
Yep.
And something we're proud of. We try 250 episodes, 3 years. I never thought we'd be at that point at 250 episodes. We've added some stuff along the way. We've changed some things. We've learned, like you guys probably learn on this podcast. You learn so much meeting people and ways to do an interview. We used to have a sheet we laid out.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
And we were like, you can't get a good story that way. You're looking down at your questions the whole time. So we've changed so much over the past 3 years. And like I said, I've learned so much. I went to Michter's the other day and was with Dan McKee and Andrea Wilson there. Dan is their master distiller. Andrea is the master of maturation. Really, she's the CEO is what she is.
Master of maceration sounds way more important, though. Master.
Yeah, but they both have that
maturation.
To
make it mature.
Oh.
Yeah. So she, me and her had this complex discussion about wood sugars and if oak from Minnesota is different from oak out of the Ozarks. That's the barrels they use in Missouri. And I would never thought if when I was in high school I'd be talking about wood sugars and how that happens, and how that bourbon goes inside the barrel and comes back out and draws that crystallization out. There's the charred barrel that try to crystallize that sugar inside there. But just fascinating discussions like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this is incredible. And this is something to complete the story from earlier. I contacted Mike when he told me he was on the Bourbon Road podcast and listened to some episodes. And I said, hey man, we're trying to put together this Bourbon Poll at the gala. And this gala will we're hoping this will raise up to $500,000 this year. But the Bourbon Poll was the single most popular part of this event. And we sold out in 20 minutes last year. We had just under 100 bottles. I said, I need to double it. I need help coming up with 200 bottles. Do you think you can get me like 20, 25 bottles? And he's like, buddy, I think I can do better than that.
I'm pretty sure we can.
Yeah. And I'm looking at probably the first 20 bottles right here. So well done, sir. I appreciate it. And it just means a lot. The people who call us for help, they're not calling with small needs. They're calling because the sheriff's at the door and they're getting kicked out of their house. And, I know that veterans are a passion of yours. I know you have served, you have spent your life doing this. Talk about that a little bit. Talk about your path and your career and what leads you to this moment where you're now wanting to help these veterans in trouble.
I think, I came from a very humble beginning in a small town of Event, Texas, a ranch community out in the middle of nowhere, 400 people. And I grew up 17 miles as the crow flies from there, really 25 miles from that town on a small ranch in Texas. And I noticed that if I was going to stay there, I was probably going to get myself in trouble. So I joined the military. I was 18 years old.
Joined the Army, right?
Joined the Army, watercraft operator. A lot of people don't know the Army has boats.
No idea. That's not the Navy?
Very small community. I did that for 10 years. It's a dying community. And even back then, I felt that need for service. I still wanted to give back. Even if I didn't have anything myself, I still would go give to friends. If a friend was in need, I wanted to help out. And then in 2001, really 1999, I met my wife. And then in 2001, we got married. 9/11 happens, and I was still getting out of the Army at the time. And luckily, she's a nurse. And she's like, let's go to dinner with another nurse and her husband. And her husband was in the Coast Guard. And he's like, why don't you join the Coast Guard? And I was like, I hadn't thought about it till that dinner.
Yeah.
And so I check into it. The day I got out of the Army, February 22nd, 2002, I drove down the road in Dallas, Texas, and raised my hand again and served another 14 years in the Coast Guard for a total of 24 years active duty. And for listeners out there, a lot of people say, well, the Coast Guard's not a military service. They get the same pay, the same retirement check, same VA benefits, same GI Bill, same everything, same rank structure. Everything's the same. They still move around. They go overseas.
Yep.
We've had coasties in Iraq. We've had coasties in Afghanistan.
Wow.
Marines typically love the Coast Guard.
Yeah, what is this? Robert, you need to weigh in here because John Holberg was on last week, and he was talking about this love affair between the Marines and the Coast Guard. What's going on there?
Yeah, he just brought up the good points because like I'm gonna start the war here, but like we're multifaceted, and so is the.
Well, apparently you both
Coast
hate
Guard.
the Navy, and I don't know why, but
No.
Oh,
okay.
I could say some things, but no, I think that's part of it. Is like it's just as John was saying, like, hey, we're taking on, no matter what your rate, your MOS is, you're taking on more than that when you're part of the Coast Guard and when you're part of the Marine Corps.
A little history: our only Medal of Honor winner, Douglas Monroe, in World War II, actually saved a Marine hero, Chesty Puller. He pulled his landing craft up on the beach, put it broadside, and put the guns to the enemy, and saved. I think he was a battalion commander at the time, and he saved that battalion commander. So there's a famous photo of Marines holding the sign that says, "Thank you, U.S. Coast Guard."
Wow. That's really cool.
15 years after enlisting is the first time I'm hearing this story, and
That's really
any
cool.
Marine who's listening, and you might or might not know this, but Chesty Puller is like the absolute.
I've heard
legend
that
of
name
the time.
before. I've heard
Yeah.
that name. I need to find that
5
picture.
Navy
I want to find that
crosses.
picture.
5 Navy crosses.
Wow.
He was that 1940s American badass, right?
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yeah. Alexis says it all the time.
I just those kind of stories like that, to know the history of Marines. And my little brother's a Marine, retired Marine. So he did 23 years. I did 24 years. I always tell him, I said, you couldn't just hack it one more year.
Sounds like an older brother remark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I retired in 2016 as a chief bosun's mate. And even then, I still felt that need for service. And when I was in the Coast Guard, because we did so much I was on a heavy icebreaker up in Michigan called the Mackinac, and we're breaking ice. And the first year I got on there, they were like, hey, today we're going to go cut these 2,000 Christmas trees. And I was like, what does breaking ice have to do with cutting Christmas trees? And they were like, well, we're a Christmas tree ship. And I was like, oh, no,
What?
We're an
Christmas
icebreaker.
What is that?
So the Coast Guard, since the 1860s, I think, has been selling Christmas trees from the Upper Peninsula of
Oh, my
Michigan
gosh.
in the tip of the mid of Michigan down to Chicago and give them to needy folks. So that cutter, even today, the new cutter still carries on that tradition. So we cut 2,000 to 2,500 Christmas trees, and we would haul them down to Chicago.
That's not really what you had in mind, though, when you joined the Coast Guard.
That is not what I had in mind at all. I thought search and rescue, and I thought law enforcement, and I did that plenty of.
Yeah.
I got my fill of search and rescue, which if nobody's ever did search and rescue on the water, it is like a drug. It gives you the ultimate adrenaline rush. Anytime you can be out in 20 to 30 foot seas in a little bitty boat, and you're getting to put your hand down and reach out for somebody, and that person in the water is looking up and they're grabbing for you. There is no greater thing.
What's that one that you remember the most? What's that one that ended well that that really just sticks out at you, kind of that proudest moment from your Coast Guard career?
Oh, there's so many rescues I can think of, but my first rescue ever, I just got in the Coast Guard. I'm up in Station Toledo, Ohio, and it's March or April, but up there, the lake is iced over, and it's called
That's Erie, right?
Lake Erie. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And the lake is kind of slushy. It looks like a big giant slushy. Some big pieces of ice, but these 7 little children, I think their ages like 6 to 9, went out on a little bitty paddle boat that you would see like on a little lake, and they paddled themselves about 10 miles.
10 miles?
Yep, and they didn't really paddle that far. The wind and current was taking them out.
Okay.
And so we got the call, and we went out and searched for them, and we found them. And just those little kids, they were hypothermic at the time, wrapping blankets around them, thermal blankets, and just the little kid grabbing onto your neck around you and stuff, and then taking them back to the pier, and all the parents are there, and they're hugging you, and everybody's crying and stuff. Before that day, I was like, man, I made a mistake. I should have stayed in the Army or went and worked construction or become a police officer or something like that. I was contemplating trying to get out of the Coast Guard. I was like, this is not for me. And that day right there changed everything. I'm telling you, there's no bigger rush for me than that right there. That rescue, those tears, it will get you. It'll suck you right in. And I was hooked then. I loved search and rescue. Like I said, I'd like being that guy. And I had a boss one time because I'm such a big guy, and I fought my weight the entire time I was in the military. And somebody was complaining. They were like, "Man, he is a big guy. He doesn't meet that mold." But my captain of the ship said, "When you're that person that's reaching their hand up, whose hand would you rather see come down for you? A little bitty, skinny, bony arm, or would you?"
I take offense to that.
And I'd be like, "Here you go."
Or do you want to
Not
see this
me.
man with the plate-sized hands reaching out for you? And
Yep.
that was my one rescue right there that lives with me today. I still have the news article.
Yeah.
It got me to doing what I'd love to do.
How do you get through the tough ones without mentioning any specifically? But I mean, how do you get to, because there's some that don't end that well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like any veteran's been through the VA, and they ask me those questions.
Yeah.
Do you have any PTSD or not
Yeah,
PTSD?
PTSD. Yeah.
I don't.
Good.
Sometimes I choke that stuff back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's growing up on a ranch and seeing death up close and being close to death, but you just choke it back. Kids are the worst.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No matter what. It is tough, but I don't sit there and dwell on that. I'm looking, how can I help something new? What's the next new thing I can do? What's the next thing I can help someone
Well, and
out?
at least you give those situations closure.
Yeah.
At least it ends it. And
I don't think some of them you can't give closure to, especially with children. And that I've seen a lot of children die, unfortunately, and it's different than war. I believe there's a difference between a combatant and a child, and I think any combat vet that was over in like Afghanistan or Iraq had seen a child die that wasn't fighting. They didn't get to make that choice for themselves. It's very difficult. I don't think you can ever make closure with that.
yeah,
An adult that makes a mistake, yeah, probably can have closure with that.
Yeah.
But a child, it's still going to live with me.
sure.
But I don't let that define my life. I'm made for greater things, like USA Cares helping you guys out, or tornado relief, which is a big, important thing to me.
Yep.
If I can find somebody to help out, and maybe that's my wife helping me out too. My wife's I think she's just an amazing woman. She grew up as a military dependent, a military wife, and now she's a military mother. In her entire life, 59 years, that's something. And even still today, she still wants to serve veterans. She's part of the Bluegrass chapter for honor flights and
Nice.
taking veterans to.
It's a great organization.
DC.
Yep.
Yeah. So that service part, and sometimes she get on and she's like, "Hey, you're stretching yourself too thin." But I think if I told you if I had 48 hours in a day, I would try to use up every 48 hours to somehow benefit others.
Yeah.
It's a call to service. I wish everybody in America was like me.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the issues we have.
Yeah.
If I see a homeless person on the street, somebody asks me if they can have some money for a meal, I'll go buy them a meal and bring it back to them.
Yeah.
Is that good?
And that's the spirit, though, that's in so many that serve. That's what, if you listen to the episode, I think you mentioned with Rod Rodriguez, the sniper, special forces sniper, and that's kind of his heart too. He's kind of like, I wish I could, take your lumps for you. I wish I could help you through all these situations, but I can't be everywhere. But I think there's so many like that who have served, who just have that heart, and that heart to go in and make somebody's situation better.
Yeah. At the end of the day, somebody asked me, what do you get out of this? I just get that feeling of whenever I go look in the mirror at the end of the day, and I do this every night when I go to bed, I look in the mirror and say, how can I be a better man tomorrow? And I've made my mistakes in life. I've sinned like nobody else can sin. I've made mistakes and made bad judgment calls, but if you're not going and looking in the mirror every day and saying, what can I do better tomorrow to be a better human being? Or you're not trying to stomp out bad in the world.
Yeah.
Then what are you doing?
Right.
I don't know. I just feel that way. I feel very powerful about that. And maybe that's my childhood. I grew up in a mixed race family. I'm part Native American. My little brother and little sister, half sister, they're half black. And, growing up with that and the way they were treated, we were always in a fist fight every day. It seemed like you had to fight and scrap, especially in a small town in Texas. I hate to say that about my hometown, but that's how I grew up. And that's who defined me and my little brother as people. We don't look at somebody as their color. We look for a person as who they are.
Right.
You know, whether they're black, red, white, green, I don't care what color you are you a good person? And a bad person's a bad person. A good person's a good person. Some people can't look at it that way. Yeah. And I think the military helped that way because you see just brothers and sisters. That's what I saw.
Well, especially when you're dependent on somebody in a difficult situation, do you really care what race they are?
You don't care what they are.
When you go to rescue somebody out of the water, do you think they care what race you are when you reach your hand out?
They don't care. They just
Exactly.
want to see that dinner plate come down.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah, I just think it's that brother sisterhood. There's an old Andy Taylor movie where I think he's in the Air Force, and all of his buddies are whistling at these women officers, and they were like, "What's wrong with you?" And he was like, "All I see is a Air Force officer," and this is back in the like 50s or 60s.
Yeah,
and that stuck with me ever since I saw that. That's all I saw as a brother or a sister in arms, and I'm going to treat that person just.
He was all about respect. Yeah.
It's a different. The military is a different breed, and I know all the veterans out there listening today understand that.
Yeah,
that resonates with them. It resonates to help as many people as you can help.
Right.
Whether it's a veteran that needs their driveway plowed, for me, or helping with a bourbon gala. Where I can make the biggest impact, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter to me what I'm doing, as long as I'm doing good. And at the end of the day, I can look in the mirror and say, I was a pretty damn good man today.
Yeah. Some days are better than others, but you try it at every day.
Well, like if you don't go to bed tired, I go to bed tired, and I still do search and rescue today from my office.
Right.
I always hope I don't get complacent in my job because I still work for the Coast Guard today.
Right.
I don't want to be complacent in my job. And I tell these young kids here, even though we're in the Midwest here, in our unit here, Sector Ohio Valley, there's about 160 Coast Guard members here, but we control 10 states for river systems.
Yep.
The Ohio River, the Tennessee River, and the Cumberland River are three major river systems, and part of the Mississippi River. But I always say, hey, the people in these 10 states pay taxes just like people on the coast do. So we owe them just as much or more of our service. And you need to give it your all and give them the best you can give them. And I try to give them that 1,000-foot view, right? Not that ground level. I'm trying to give them that 1,000-foot and say, here's why the numbers matter. Here's why we put data in a system. How many lives we save, how much property we save, how much cargo is going through the river system. That all matters. That all gets tax dollars back here to the state of Kentucky, to Indiana, to the river states. And it's still important.
That's awesome.
It's important to Coast Guards here. I don't think people realize what's on the river system.
We don't.
No. I remember when I moved to Louisville 11 years ago. It was 11 years ago. And driving down River Road, if you know Louisville at all, River Road just runs parallel to the Ohio River. And seeing Coast Guard boats out on the river, I'm like, are they lost? Are they supposed to be here?
Yep.
But it's the work they do. It seems like you guys are always busy. There's always stuff going on because of all the barges going through and all the commercial traffic and everything else.
Well, Louisville's always been a integral part of America, all the way from Lewis and Clark going over the falls of the Ohio, which is here in downtown Louisville.
Yep.
There's a locking down there now, but there's an old Coast Guard station here, Coast Guard Station number 1 on the rivers, that is now the offices for the Belle of Louisville. That's
Is that what that is?
That is a
I
Coast Guard
didn't know
station.
that.
That's neat.
Wow. I didn't know that.
What they used to do was they would take that Coast Guard station and drag it out in the center of the river.
Yeah.
And they would anchor it out. And when somebody was going to go over the falls, these guys would get in rowboats and row out there.
Oh my gosh.
Now you talk about, you got to be pretty brave, really.
Yeah.
And there's actually there's a memorial for boat forces in the Coast Guard. And I still look at that today, and there's a couple of guys from Louisville, that station, that died trying to rescue people. And so to me, that history is here.
Yeah.
The Coast Guard's always been here. 2000 or 19 in the 1913s and 1920s, there was a great flood here. And there were more Coast Guard members that came to the Western Rivers than the rest of the entire Coast Guard.
Wow.
That helped out. I don't remember what years those were, but maybe it was the 30s, and that's kind of where flood control came and dams and stuff like that. But the Coast Guard has always had an integral part in the Western Rivers, especially here in Louisville. And I'm just glad to be part of that history.
That's so cool.
Still getting to serve today, you know.
Yeah.
Do I go out and physically rescue? You know, those years are past me.
Yeah.
I'm better behind a computer and a phone. So yeah.
Who was that? Who is that person? Because you talk about this spirit of service. Who is that person in your life that really instilled that in you? Who is that person that meant a lot to you that really gave you that?
I don't have that person. I grew up with an abusive stepfather. My mother was working a lot of jobs and left us alone, so I didn't have that role model. Maybe a guy I'd worked for construction for, and his dad owned an Exxon filling station. And me and you were talking about that when I was in the Army. I had my times where I wish I had a USA Cares.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring that up unless you wanted to, but I think it does tell the story of what we do, and why we do what we do a little bit.
I bounced at a bar and at a biker bar off duty, which I probably wasn't supposed to be doing. I worked at a gas station. I worked construction. Also, all because I couldn't really support my family with just the Army paycheck. I can remember lining up and getting my first paycheck, and because back then that's how they did it. They just called your Social Security number out, screaming it in front of everybody.
Hopefully they don't do it that way anymore.
You lined up at a pay window, and you would either get traveler's checks or cash. And this is before then, before you had a bank account. I had a bank account, but you still get up there and get your window. Then you go to deposit in your bank. And then after the first year, they said you got to get a bank account. But I remember seeing that first paycheck, and I was like, I don't know. How am I supposed to live? But I was living in the barracks, and it worked. You get free meals, but then I get married, and the money just wasn't enough, so I have to go get another job, a part-time job. And a lot of soldiers out there, a lot of Marines, a lot of airmen, a lot of sailors, a lot of coasties, they still do that today. They still have to get help. We have service members that are on welfare. I'm sure a lot of people don't know that. A lot of service members
heartbreaking,
get WIC to just make it through the month. Childcare can be so expensive that if you have a spouse that is at home, it's more expensive to have child care than it is to just let that spouse stay at home. And then that doesn't cover bills. It's not as glamorous as everybody thinks it is. So this guy hired me named Lloyd Stevens. He never served, but he was like such a father figure to me. He would teach me so much, like construction, and he had a really, really nice construction company. But he was always doing stuff, giving back and stuff. And he would give us stuff. He'd leave groceries in my truck, and
that's awesome.
And still be paying me. So I guess that would be that guy I look back on. And I've told him that. I called him a couple years ago and said, Lloyd, I don't know if you knew this or not, but you met me at one of my lowest times in my life. I was going through a divorce. I had nowhere to live. I lived in my car for a couple weeks. It was super low. I never got to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to give up.
Right.
I said, man, I got to struggle. I got to do this. And people were probably saying, well, you could have lived in the barracks or not back then, because if you were married and I was still married, they didn't let you come back into the barracks. So I didn't have a place to live. And then I was taking showers at work really early in the morning. And, I look back in those times, and maybe that's what defined me right there. What brought me to service, I'm not sure. I just, like I said, I always felt the need for helping somebody out. One of those times that resonates with me so much, and I realized that person needed help. Me and my wife were up in Michigan, and we're going camping, and we're driving down the road. We're dragging our camper, and we have this one of the best dogs ever, a little Boston Terrier. And we have an expedition. We let him out the back, and he jumps down and hits the trailer plug. And it comes out, and I didn't notice. So I dragged that trailer plug like 100 miles.
Oh my gosh!
So I get to the campground, and I pull in the campground, and a guy at the camper by us, he's like, "Hey man, you're dragging your trailer plug. He helped me out fix it. Went in town, got everything I needed, wired it back up, got it working. Well, the next morning I see him out in the campground. This is summertime up in Michigan, Silver Lake Sand Dunes, which is, if you've never been there, is an amazing place.
Yep.
Crystal blue water.
Yep.
No sharks in there. But I see Gary out at his campfire without a shirt on, and his back is just covered in scars.
Oh, wow.
And I said, man, he's got to be a military veteran. I just knew it. So I asked Gary, I said, would you mind me asking you? I said, this is kind of rude, but I said, I noticed your back. And he was like, yeah, I was a POW in Vietnam.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, he told me his whole story. He told me everything. And a lot of veterans won't tell you their story. And he was like, we got to be really close.
Yeah.
So, and come to find out, they only lived like 50 miles for us. So we'd go over there on Sundays. And Gary was hurting one day, and they're trying to dig this pond in their backyard for ducks. And they got a backhoe, but the bucket's a little bitty. So he says, I got a buddy that has a bucket. Will you go with me? And we'll go get that. So I went and got it with him. And I'm dressed in a nice button-down shirt and khakis. And him and his buddy are struggling. They can't pick this bucket up.
Oh, wow.
And I just went over there and said, get out of the way. And I got this nice, pretty much color of your shirts, blue shirt on and the, tan khakis. I picked that bucket up, put it up on the back of their deal, and I'm covered in grease,
of course,
dirt. And then I get over there, and he doesn't know how to operate a backhoe very well. So I get out there, and I
feel like you got pulled into this one. Yeah.
I worked for like 8 hours digging a duck pond is the moral of the story. But that right there, I see somebody need, and I noticed Gary needed my help. And, I think, you just meet people at the right time, the right place. And he probably needed another veteran to tell his story to. And he sat there at the campfire, and he was quiet around his wife. And she was like, Elia, she told me, she was like, I've never heard him tell anybody that story.
Really?
Ever.
Wow.
And maybe that's because nobody was rude enough to ask him.
It's hard to ask. It's hard to ask.
But there's veterans out there today that need to tell their story. They probably do need to talk to somebody. And if you're a veteran out there and you're listening today, tell your story to somebody. It eases that pain, I think. It eases that what you got built up inside. I got a person that I talk to every day. It's my baby brother. He's a veteran too. So who else better to talk to? Almost daily we call each other and talk.
And Mike, we talk about that a lot on this podcast. A lot of times we've had some guests on, and we'll say, what's the best thing you can do? And he said, call 5 people. Let them know you're thinking about them. Call 5 veterans and just let them know you're thinking about them. Let them, give them a chance to talk. But getting that story out just makes a big difference.
Yeah. It can definitely help you out. And if you're a veteran in need, USA Cares is a place to call. I said I wish I would have had that at the time. I needed that.
I wish we could have been there for you. Yeah.
One of the toughest, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I wanted to be the right kind of man. I had a baby girl at the time, and I still needed to pay my child support. And I didn't want to be that dad that never paid child support.
Yeah.
My biological father never paid a dime for me.
Yeah.
And I always think, if my mom would have had enough support for 4 children, how much different would have her life been, and how much different would our lives been? So I wanted to make sure I did that, but you still got to figure out a way to make that money.
Right.
Yeah.
My wife would tell you that I could make a pack of hot dogs last a week. Not the best thing to eat when you're a soldier, but
it's a talent though.
You just got to dig through, and if you're that veteran in need right now, there's somebody out there. There's a hotline. There's all kinds of avenues to call.
Yeah.
Heck, you can look up our website, give me a call.
Yeah.
I'll talk.
USA Cares is one of many, and we may not be the right fit for you, but find one that is. Definitely.
You tell me. I'll talk all day long.
No. But that's, we mentioned that a lot. There's literally thousands of military-based nonprofits out there. Some of them have their specialties. We have areas where we help, but another nonprofit might be better. So do your research, look into it, but there's plenty of help out there, so definitely reach out.
I'd say too, even if you're not a veteran, you're listening to this and you got a family member that's a veteran, and that's why you're watching this or listening to us. Check on your veteran.
Yes.
Or just your people. We got a bourbon group too.
Yep.
It's called the Bourbon Roadies on Facebook, and really proud of it because we don't tolerate any rudeness in there. But I noticed this lady, she's called the Bourbon Chick, Chris. She hadn't posted in a couple weeks on there, and she takes the most beautiful bourbon photos. And so I got Chris's number, and
Yeah.
I'm driving to work yesterday, and that's kind of where I do my business is in my 30-minute commute in the afternoons, or if I'm driving home from work, that's when I get on the phone and I talk to people. And I called her up, and she posted last night in our group, and she said, I really needed that phone call yesterday, more than you'll ever know.
Wow.
And that to me, that meant something.
Yeah.
And I make those phone calls all the time. If I don't, I just want to hear somebody's voice and talk to them and say, hey, I'm just checking on you today. Do that battle buddy check.
Yep.
That veteran needs that phone call sometimes.
Absolutely.
To lift them up, whether you know it or not. Veterans tend not to tell their story. They're not a big mouth like me. Just blab it all out. But some of them are very quiet, and they need that little poke to say, hey, how's your day going? What's hitting you hard today? Whether you know their story or that you don't know their story, it's important for them to hear somebody say,
that's what's cool, it ties back to the bourbon, right? Because the bourbon opens up a conversation and builds relationships that can eventually lead to those conversations where, the bourbon may be something you have in common, but it can open up conversations later on and open up opportunities like the Roadies on Facebook. And it's cool. It gives you a lot of avenues to go.
Well, you'd be surprised how many veterans are in bourbon.
Yeah.
One of the ones that's sent an email back to us quickly. Yeah. Super early in the morning, because I sent the emails out for bourbon probably about 3:30 in the morning. I'm sending out emails, and at 4:30, 5 o'clock, Mark Irwin from Bardstown Bourbon Company, he's the CEO there, sends an email right back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know he is a retired Special Forces officer. And I emailed him back and said, no surprise you're up right now. But there's a lot of veterans in the community. And when I did an interview with him, and I know Jim felt this way too, you have that instant connection, that instant respect of somebody that went through what he went through. I don't remember how many years Mark served, but he is retired. So I'm assuming he did 24 to 28 years in the military. And he knew I kind of went through that same prison sentence. This is what I call it. Yeah. It is like a prison sentence after so many years. You're like, man, is this almost over with? But yeah, it's
wild.
There's a lot of conversations in these bottles, a lot of stories of perseverance. One of the groups out there right now that if you're a veteran, find that veteran company. And one of those companies, bourbon companies, is Horse Soldier.
Absolutely. We've had them on. So we had Will Summers from Horse Soldier on here.
Special Forces soldiers. They rode horses into battle, and now they are bringing that back to Kentucky. $50 million distillery they're building down in Somerset, I think. Some amazing whiskey that they have in a bottle right now. Is it a little bit more pricey than other bourbons?
A little bit
more pricey, but
I think it's worth it. The bottle itself was molded. I learned this.
Yes.
One thing I learned.
Very good.
It was molded from steel from the Twin Towers.
Yeah, it would have took $50,000 to make a bottle mold, and they had the piece of steel, so they kind of got lucky with that. But those guys still put work and effort into that company. But if you want to put your money towards a veteran company, a veteran-owned business, that's a great one.
Yeah.
One of our good buddies, he's actually a sponsor, is Chris Cruz.
Chris Cruz. He's been on here as well. Yeah, good friend.
Me and Chris, I just love that guy. He does some great stuff, makes beautiful artwork.
Yep.
You won't meet a more humble guy if you need something. We sat out at our house and, man, we drank a lot of bourbon. and
cruisecustomsflags.com.
Yeah.
Great sites. Check it out.
Just some amazing furniture. If you're a veteran, you have a company, and you need you got a big conference room, their general flag
it's huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Auction went off last year.
Yeah. We were on, Chris was on Fox News with us, and we were able to talk about his flags and do a live build and the whole thing. It was a lot of fun. So
yeah, he actually has a flag thing where veterans can come out and build a flag.
Yeah.
Eat some barbecue.
I forget what it's called. What's it called?
B3.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
bourbon build and barbecue.
That's what it is. Thank you,
Yeah,
Robert.
he put me to work on it, and it's the first time I ever built one of those flags. Was like,
They're not easy, are
no,
they?
and I had to do it like 10 minutes. He's like, hey, you have about 15 minutes to learn this.
Yeah.
And now you're going to do it for about 50 other people.
Wow.
That was
I
fun.
told him, I said, you shouldn't drink bourbon and operate nail guns.
No. You got to do that in the right order. It's like our bullets, barbecue, and bourbon. You got to do it in the right order.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
that's part of the appeal, though. That was part of their marketing.
Kind of the danger of
power
it.
tools and bourbon. Come on in.
Well, Mike, I want to give you something. So our good friend in the booth here, Josh Kirby, and I don't know if he can hear me or not, he designed these challenge coins. And I'm not going to do the cool handshake because I can't at this angle. But Coast Guard is represented on the back. And you've done a lot to help USA Cares, and I appreciate your service.
Well, I appreciate that. I actually have a really cool coin rack.
Do you? Good.
And not until this year have I ever put my coins up. They were in a box, and they
Yeah.
each mean something to me. You know, I remember when challenge coins first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that don't know what a challenge coin is, and I know all your listeners know, when I first was in the service, there was very few challenge coins out there. Either a colonel or a general, a command sergeant major would have a coin, and you'd get them. And I had collected those through my career. So Chris actually makes an American flag coin holder, and I got one from him, and I put it up. My wife calls it "I love me wall." I put it up, and I put all my coins on it, and I was just surprised at how many coins I had from the past 30 years of service. And I've got so many, so I can't thank you enough. These do mean a lot to me, because I'll pass that thing every day in the hallway, and I go by and I'll see a coin. I got one special coin on there I pull off. I actually used that yesterday morning for an event because the Chiefs have and the Coast Guard have a process that they go through initiation to become a chief, and I went through that. So you get a coin at the end of that, and to come to those events, you have to bring your coin and lay it out. So I took it off the shelf, and but thank you so much.
That's
I really
awesome.
appreciate it. I'm glad to see the Coast Guard on here.
Yeah, and Space Force.
I don't know enough.
You're going to
about
have to help us get somebody from Space Force on here. Robert, you're going to have to pull some strings with the Marines. I'm sure since Marines and Coast Guard are like besties that maybe you can find a Space
The only
Force
person I know is Steve Carell.
I was going to say,
Oh my
Steve
gosh.
Carell.
Yeah.
My son's actually in the Air Force.
Well, there you go.
I asked
So
him if he would,
if you can make that happen, that'd be great. But man, I asked you for a little help, and you gave a lot. Means a lot to all of us. You'll never know how many people you're going to help with the money we're going to raise with this bourbon when we sell it. And
well, you
from
guys
all
got
of us, thank you,
a
man.
silent auction there too.
We got a silent auction. We've got a live auction. We've got trips to Paris coming. We've got trips to Hawaii coming. We've got some really amazing items. You had a friend who donated a bourbon rocking chair, a bourbon barrel rocking chair, which is gorgeous. We've got all kinds of gift baskets. This is a true gala in every sense of the word. Black tie. Big Chief here is going to get in the tux. It's going to be great. But definitely go to usacares.org and check it out. We would love for you to be a part of it. It's at the beautiful Galt House in downtown Louisville.
Yes.
So, Mike, thank you, man.
Well, cheers.
Cheers. Left hand.
Finish this up.
Left hand. Yeah.
We'll see if we
But,
can get Alexis to finish up.
That's right. But check out the Bourbon Road podcast and hit subscribe on that one too. These guys do a great job. So,
Thanks.
All right, let's finish this out. So good. So, Alexis, you okay?
Yep.
Not a bourbon drinker. That says it all. But no, it's a lot of fun, and check out these great bottles at our gala. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our people who join us every single week and make this podcast what it is. Big thank you to Speakeasy Podcast Network and the great work that they do. So from all of us at the USA Cares podcast, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being with you next week.